Hi guys, so we're back again with another topic, but before we begin, let's first have an icebreaker. So as you can see on your screen, we have three words here. You have to pronounce this one on your own, and let's see later on if you've gotten those pronunciation correctly. I'll be giving you 10 seconds to pronounce this on your own, so the timer starts now. All right, so let's see if you've gotten the correct pronunciation for this one. So the first word we have ceremony. Again, ceremony. So the first syllable receives the emphasis in pronouncing the word. Usually kasi some people pronounce this as ceremony. The second syllable receives the stress when in fact the correct pronunciation is ceremony. So the first syllable gives an emphasis, unlike some pronunciation from other people that we might consider correct when in fact it's not. So remember that ceremony, the first syllable receives the stress. Okay, let's go to the second word. We have two possible pronunciation for this one, depending if it's a noun or a verb. When we say noun, this is how you pronounce it. Record, record, record. So when we talk about the verb, on the other hand, we say record, record, record. So for this second word, we have record and record. On the third word, we have two possible pronunciation for this. One for the noun and one for the verb. So when we talk about the noun, we say desert, desert, desert. When we talk about the verb, we say dessert, dessert. So usually guys, when we have two syllable words and this word has the same property with the noun and the verb, the first syllable which receives the stress is the noun. So parang yung example natin, record, desert. So the first syllable, since noun sila, receives the stress. Kapag verb naman, usually yung second syllable, sila yung nakaka-receive ng stress. For example, record, right? So the emphasis is on the second syllable kapag verb. What about yung dessert? Dessert. So the second syllable receives the emphasis or the stress. Yun naman yung sa verb natin. Okay? So this pronunciation or emphasis on each syllable of the words has something to do with our topic today, which is the stress. So this stress is a grammatical device in English. So this is different from the one that you are experiencing right now. 'Di ba? Magkaiba siya. Psychologically speaking, stress is very bad on our health, but there are some good stress as well in our life. But this one, stress is related to the English, especially in speech communications. Just an introduction. Stress is an important feature of English pronunciation, and to become a powerful communicator of English, one needs proficiency while using different stress patterns in his communication. So, stress is really important when you are pronouncing a word because you might tell or convey your messages differently if you have pronounced the other syllables in a word differently. So stress is really important. Stress matters when you are communicating in English. Aside from that, the desire to learn English is not very new and it's constantly growing by day. Since we are a very competitive country and up to this day we are being globally competitive not only in the Philippines but outside, we have to equip ourselves with different skills that will help us to communicate with our nation and to other nations as well. So if you want to go abroad or you have plans to reside or apply work on the other countries aside from the Philippines, then you might as well um, practice and make yourself a better person when it comes to communicating with the native speakers because sometimes our native speakers may have difficulty in pronouncing words correctly kahit native speakers sila. And we Filipinos have the edge in communicating because we speak clearly, more fast, and more at least much better than some of the native speakers in some countries. So that's something that we should be proud of as Filipinos. All right. So the question is, why do we need to study stress in English? So what is the essence of studying about stress in pronunciation? So a part of the meanings of a word depends on stress. It serves to mark the function of words in spoken language. So a while back during our icebreaker activity, there are two words there which have a different pronunciation depending if it's a noun or a verb. For example, yung record, and then yung desert at dessert. Now, if you have mispronounced this while you are communicating with someone, they might be interpreting your message incorrectly. Lalo na if you are pertaining to a noun, tas yung pagkasabi mo is yung pronunciation ng verb, para yung sa desert, di ba? Supposedly, ang dapat mong sabihin, desert. Pero ang nasabi mo, dessert. So, magkakaroon ng ibang interpretation on the part of the listener. So, we should be careful and we should be well aware of how we pronounce words when we are communicating. So let's define now stress. So ano nga ba yung stress? So stress is the degree of force with which a syllable or a word is uttered. So it's also defined as the degree of prominence a syllable has. So remember, in phonemes, you have learned how a word is made of depending on the sounds each word has. Dito naman sa stress, we'll be able to know how syllable is being emphasized when we are pronouncing it. So, as a nature of stress, just to give you a short background on this one, is simple enough that everyone can understand that words like father, open, camera have first syllables as stressed. In potato, apartment, relation, middle syllable is stressed, whereas in about receive and perhaps final syllable is stress. So some people, if not all, are really confused as to how a single word is pronounced. There are some words out there that we are really confused of as to how they are being pronounced. And we as the student and you, lalo na kayo, of speech communication, we must learn how to pronounce some words that we are not familiar of or aware of para in the future, hindi na natin to mapopronounce as incorrect. So let's see. How do we know that a syllable is being stressed in a word? So what makes it stressed in a word? So there are three possible ways that we can use to identify the stress syllable in a word. So the first one is the loudness. So many people seem to feel that stressed syllables are louder than unstressed. Loudness is a component of prominence. Take example of nonsense word. Ba, 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 ba. So every time when we are angry, right, we tend to make some words a little louder just to give an emphasis or meaning to the one we are referring to. So the same with the stress. Usually kasi yung mga stress syllables natin in a word, they are pronounced louder than the other syllables. So for example, yung word na uh, record, right? So pansinin ninyo, record. So which syllable has a louder pronunciation? Record. So we're talking about the noun here. record. So the first syllable receives the first stress since it's a noun. So mas malakas siyang sabihin or i-utter as compared to the second syllable. So that's one thing that you can make use of, lalo na kung may nagsasalita, 'di ba? They usually give emphasis to what they're saying every time they are saying it louder. So one component is the loudness of the utterance. Next, aside from loudness, we also have the length. So the length of a syllable has an important part to play in prominence. So if one syllable is made longer, it will be heard as stressed. So if we are pronouncing a word, aside from its loudness, we can also consider its length, kung gaano natin siya i-pronounce. So let's take the dessert as an example, yung verb. So dessert, dessert, dessert. So the second syllable receives the stress because we are pertaining to the verb. So the longer it is pronounced, we're talking about syllable here, then the greater chance that it has the stress. So dessert, dessert. So dessert syllable is pronounced longer than the first syllable. So another thing that you can make use of if you're trying to identify the stressed syllable of a word is its length. So we have the loudness. Second, we have the length. And lastly, we have the pitch. So every voice syllable is said on some high pitch will produce an effect of prominence. So yung pitch kasi yung highness or lowness ng tone natin. Usually, if a syllable is stressed in a particular word, it receives yung pinakamatinis na boses natin. Like, for example, um, ceremony, right? Ceremony. So aside from its loudness, its length, the longer it is pronounced, and the pitch, right? So pansinin ninyo, ceremony, ceremony. So the other syllables might be pronounced monotonous, pero on the first syllable, yung ceremony, so medyo tataas ng konti yung tone ng voice natin. So those are the signs or the ways on how we can identify the stress in a syllable of the words. So I hope that this will help you each time you are trying to communicate with native speakers, with foreigners, with some English speakers, or with your relatives who speak English, and so on. Okay, so let's have another practice again. And this time I want you to pronounce again these examples here on your own. So we have three words. I'm giving you 5 seconds to pronounce this one. Okay, let's see. We have on the first word, we have crazy, crazy, crazy. Second word, we have book, book, book. Third word, rather, we have near, near, near. So what did you notice upon pronouncing these words? So first, we have its loudness. Did you notice that? Before we get into that, let's identify first the syllable that receives the stress. So those words actually receives the first stress on the first syllable. So dun sa first word natin, crazy, the first syllable receives the stress. And on the following words, since it's only one syllable, then that syllable receives the stress in the words. So I have also written here the transcription of these words. So going back to what I'm saying, did you notice how loud I pronounce these words? And also the length, the longer I pronounce the stress syllables than the other. And then its pitch. Notice how I change the tone of my voice every time I utter the stress syllables, right? So um, by just hearing or looking at how words are stressed, then we can already have the idea on what these words mean. So aside from that, we have hints here that the first syllable of each words here receives the stress. So, pansinin niyo yung apostrophe before the word. So, ito, yung parang which siya sa taas, yung apostrophe. If you try to look over your dictionaries and try to type in some words, and then pag-clinic nyo siya, ewan ko kung na-try nyo na in your devices kapag may dictionary kayo or even in some books that you have at home, pansinin ninyo makakatulong yung ganitong symbols in finding out the stress in a particular syllable of the word. So usually, kapag ganito yung nakita ninyo sa dictionary ninyo, yung apostrophe, so meaning yung syllable na yan, siya yung nagre-receive ng stress sa word natin. So in the word crazy, the syllable cray receives the stress, kaya siya merong stress na symbol dito. Same true with the other words. So the stress symbol is written before the word. So, dito siya nilalagay. Ganyan. Tingnan nyo sa dictionary ninyo. You can check it out. You can identify the stress syllable of a word by looking at the symbol apostrophe. That's where or when you will know that a specific syllable is being stressed. So, I hope that helps. Now let's identify the stress words and unstressed words. So, ano nga ba yung mga words na ine-stress natin and ano yung mga hindi binibigyan ng emphasis when they are being uttered? So, for stress words, the commonly words that we give an emphasis of are the following. We have nouns, the demonstrative and interrogative pronouns, the main verbs, adjectives, and the adverbs. For those who are unstressed, we have the pronouns, the prepositions, conjunctions, and the helping verbs. So let's expand this one by having some examples. So for stressed words, we have here following sentences just to give us hints. So on the first sentence, we have her complexion is fair. So our word here is fair, which pertains to an adjective. So since stress words or under stress words we have adjectives, then we give emphasis in uttering the word fair in the sentence. Her complexion is fair. So we give emphasis on this adjective because it's part of a word that needs to be stressed off. Next, we have who is there? Who is there? So our interrogative pronoun here is the word who. So pansinin din ninyo yung symbol dito na apostrophe, meaning we are going to stress that one when we are uttering it. Next, we have the main verbs. I went to Multan. I went to Multan. So the word went here is our main verbs and it also receives a stress syllable. So we also have noun. Aya is a good girl. Aya is a good girl. So yung aya natin, we stress that one when we pronounce or say this sentence one by one. So that's for nouns. And lastly, we have for adverb. So what is our adverb here? We have the word quickly. So John went there quickly. So dito kasi, since may John tayo, this is a noun. We also stress that one. And also we have here quickly as an adverb. So John went there quickly. So these are the words that we always stressed when we are uttering it in a sentence. So do not forget that. We have adjective, interrogative, or demonstrative pronouns, main verbs, noun, and adverb. So what are the words naman on the other hand that we cannot stress? Let's go back. So the words that we cannot stress in a sentence are the following: the pronouns, prepositions, conjunctions, and helping verbs. So I will no longer be giving an example for this one because we will be focusing on the stress words only. But just to give you an overview, or the background. These are the words under unstressed words that we don't usually give an emphasis of when we are uttering it. Now let's go to the types of stress. So, according to a reliable source, we have three types of stress. We have primary, secondary, and zero stress. So, in primary stress, this refers to the strong emphasis a speaker puts on the most important syllable of a particular word. On the other hand, secondary stress refers to a less strong emphasis on the next most important syllable. And lastly, we have zero stress, which refers to any syllable that receives no stress, and it's also called unstressed syllables. If we are uttering a quite longer word, you notice that there are some syllables that we give um, a greater emphasis of. So, primary stress yun. Meron naman yung iba, nasa parang medium or middle part siya. That's for secondary stress. And those words that we don't usually give an emphasis of, yun na yung may zero stress. And usually, if not all, ang most commonly unstressed syllables, if it's a longer than usual words, yung last syllable natin. So, the last syllable usually receives zero stress or no stress at all. So, I'll be giving you an example here of the words that we might be pronouncing incorrectly, but this time let's take a look at the following examples to enlighten us with the correct pronunciation. So, we have here word types. We have the two syllable words for nouns. The first syllable is being stressed, such as the word center, object, flower. So for these two syllable nouns, the stress syllable is on the first, the stress syllable, yes, is on the first one. On the verb naman, usually it's on the last syllable if it's two syllable word, okay? So for example, we have release, admit, arrange. I have already mentioned about this one kanina a while back if you can still remember. If we are talking about nouns, if it has two syllables, the first syllable usually receives the stress. But if it's a verb consisting of two syllables, the last syllable usually receives the stress. Let's go to compound words. It's divided into three, the noun, adjective, and verb. So for nouns naman, the stress is present on the first syllable, such as desktop, pencil case, bookshelf, greenhouse. So the emphasis is on the first syllable. What about for adjectives and verbs? It's on the last part. Okay, let's have well meant, hard headed, old fashioned, understand, overlook, outperform. So that's how you pronounce it. And remember, if we are talking about compound words or the words that go together, two words that go together always, laging ito yung tatandaan ninyo. If they are nouns, we're talking about nouns here. First, syllable siya. Kapag adjective naman and verb, sa last syllable siya. So, may pattern dyan. And ganito siya. Usually, pag noun on the first syllable. Kapag verb, on the second syllable or the last syllable. Okay, another example. Let's have phrasal verbs. So, the stress is present on the particle. So, we have an example here for phrasal verbs. We have turn off, buckle up, hand out. Okay, so these words on the last part of phrasal verbs are being stressed. So always remember that when using phrasal verbs in a sentence or when you are trying to utter it, the second syllable or the last syllable of the phrasal verbs are being stressed or on the particle itself. Okay, so another example we have words with added ending. So usually itong mga word na nag-end sa IC such as allergic, tapos Sean, Shan, Sean, itong mga to, Fiji, try, sci-fi, depende kung paano siya i-pronounce in a word. and then meter. So, ganito siya bibigyan ng stress. So, for the first two boxes here sa taas, the syllable before the ending, doon natin makikita yung stress niya. For example, words ending with IC. We have economic, geometric, electrical, electrical. So, the syllable before the ending receives the stress. However, on this type of words ending with these letters, the third from the last syllable receives the stress. So let's have these examples: photography, biology, geometry, parameter, thermometer, barometer. So notice how I change the pitch of my voice and the loudness every time I utter these syllables on each word. So that's your signs and hints that you can make use of and pattern as well in order to identify the stress in a word. So take note of this, guys, because I will be including this in your exam as well. I might be asking you to find which syllable is stressed in a word or find the words that are being stressed in a sentence. So aside from words being stressed, we also have sentence stress. So, sentence stress refers to the word or words in a sentence that receive a strong accent. In sentence stress, this is what gives English its rhythm or beat. Word stress is accent on one syllable within a word. But sentence stress, on the other hand, is the strong accent on certain words within a sentence. So, sentence stress is the music of spoken language. That's true. Like word stress, sentence stress can help you to understand spoken English, especially when spoken fast. If you have tried communicating with native speakers or foreigners, notice how they change their pitch every time they utter a word in a sentence, right? It really suits and calming to the ears when they pronounce it right. And come to think about it, if you pronounce words in a sentence using a monotonous voice, meaning yung hindi nagbabago yung pitch, and it's quite awkward kasi. That is why we call it the rhythm or beat in the English language kasi it makes English language a little interesting to the speakers. So, there you go. Under sentence stress, there are types of words that are being emphasized here. We have the content words or the information words, and then the function words or the structure words. So what are these? The content words are the keywords of a sentence. They are the important words that carry the meaning or sense. Whereas function words have little or no meaning in themselves. They are small, simple words that make the sentence correct grammatically. Now, for these words naman, there is a note here that if you remove the function words from a sentence, you will probably still understand the sentence because usually kasi function words are just quantifiers, yung mga ano lang siya, articles in a sentence na kahit tanggalin mo, the thought is still there. So, here's an example to explain it further. So, for content words, ito siya, mga nouns, such as computer, board, etc. Aside from nouns, pwede ring verbs, adjectives, and then adverbs. So usually mga parts of speech siya. Kapag function words naman, these are the articles, the, an, and so on. We also have auxiliaries such as can, must, etc. And then demonstrative, itong mga to, these, this, that, those, quantifiers too. We have many, few, little, so on. Prepositions, pronouns, and conjunctions. Ito yung mga function words natin in a sentence. Alright? Now, let's go to your performances for midterm. So here is what you're going to do. This activity will serve as your activity and your midterm requirement. As you can see, the scoring here is 50 points, but this will become 100 points since it's divided into two. For activity, it's 50 points. And for your requirement, it's 50 points as well. So whatever your score is, pareho lang siya sa activity and sa midterm requirement ninyo. So make sure that you do well with this performance. So here's what you're going to do. I will be providing group of words that you're going to pronounce, and then make sure that you follow the correct stress on each word. So for your scoring, it will be a perfect score of 50. However, it will be deducted depending on the words that you will be mispronouncing. So each mispronounced words or wrong stress in a word every time you utter it will be deducted from your score. So one word is minus 1 point. So kapag may mali kayong na-pronounce or nalagyan ng maling stress, isang point na yung made-deduct sa 50 points ninyo. So you have to be very careful with this one, and it takes a practice and effort to perfectly pronounce the following words. So what are you going to use in this performance? So you'll be using any platform of your choice in recording yourself. It can be through video, TikTok, since it's a trend now. If you have an account, you can make use of that. Screen recording, for example, ginawa mo siyang presentation, tapos lalagyan mo siya ng audio, and then video editing if you have one, and etc. Anything that you can make use of as a platform in recording and showing the words you are uttering. So I will not be accepting voice records since hindi ko makikita yung words na pinopronounce ninyo. So you might want to use TikTok or screen recording, or you want to record yourself while pronouncing these words. So after doing that, you will be sending your entry in our GC. So the deadline will be next week, but I'm not sure of the specific date. But just be ready. Make sure that you have already done it this week so that next week ipapasa nyo na lang siya. I will be um announcing that one beforehand sa GC natin. Do not worry. I'll be just asking you to prepare it this week para hindi kayo maghabol next week, because I'm planning to conduct your midterm exam next week na. So be ready. We still have one more topic for midterms, and I'll be sending that one within this week. So here are the words that you are going to pronounce on your activity and midterm requirement. We have two-syllable words here, three-syllable words, and the longer words. So ito siya. I-browse nyo na lang siya while watching this video. So another, we have here these words, and then these words, and lastly, we have these words. Okay, hinati ko siya. May mga words na ang stress ay nasa first syllable. Ito naman yung nasa second syllable yung stress niya. Ito naman on the third, and this one is on the fourth syllable. Okay, so good luck, guys. And ito lang for today. I hope that you've learned something today, and please prepare your activity and midterm requirement for next week. Goodbye.